Hey, good morning, class. Welcome in. So, we are going to embark on our second discussion here to open things up. We're going to be in Chapter 1, Section 2. And today we're going to take a look at trade-offs. So, last week we started out with what is economics. We took a look at factors of production. We took a look at the entrepreneurship. We took a look at wants and needs. Today we're going to take a look at trade-offs, okay? So, what is a trade-off? Well, let's get into this a little bit, okay? So, the economic choices that people make involving the exchange of one good or service for another is essentially going to be a trade-off. Okay, if you choose to buy a MacBook, you are trading your income for the right to own a MacBook. Exchanging one thing for another is called a trade-off. Okay, individuals, families, businesses, and societies are forced to make trade-offs every time they use their resources in one way and not another. So basically, what it comes down to is instead of saving my money, okay, for a particular event. So suppose saving my money for a vacation. I am going to decide to use my money and I'm going to spend on a brand new flat screen TV. Okay, so if I decide to do that, the trade-off is, well, again, I get a beautiful brand new plasma TV in 4K, but the thing is, I don't get to go on that vacation. That money that I was saving up, all of a sudden I took a detour. Okay, so that's the trade-off. All right. So let's talk about the cost of trade-offs. All right. Now the cost of a trade-off is what you give up to get or do something else. Okay. So time is a scarce resource. Okay. We only have 24 hours in a day. All right. So it's important to choose how to use it. Studying for a class for a few hours means that you're giving up other activities that you could be doing. Okay. This happens all the time in high school and college, right? You know that you have a class, you know that you have a test, you got an exam coming up, and you're looking at it and you say, hey, if I study for 3 hours, I'm going to be solid, I'm going to be ready to go. But then on the other hand, you're like, well, these 3 hours, I really want to play video games with my buddies. And again, what this is going to lead to is what we call an opportunity cost. So an opportunity cost, this is the value of the next best alternative given up for the alternative that was chosen. Okay? So what do we value here? If you are going to value your homework, if you're going to value your study time, okay, the opportunity cost when you lead into that test or the exam is that study time. So if you give up that study time to play video games for those 3 hours, that's what you're missing out on. Okay, that's the opportunity that's costed. Okay. Okay, let's talk more about opportunity costs. So when you study, all right, you could be giving up multiple alternatives. All right. However, the one that you consider to be the single best alternative is the opportunity cost for study. So, again, you decide to go and study. You're going to study for those 3 hours. The best alternative, the best thing that you could have been doing, all right, is what you consider your opportunity cost. So whatever the best alternative would have been. So it could have been playing those video games for 3 hours. It could have been watching a football game. It could have been going to a concert. Whatever you consider to be the best alternative to what you are actually doing, that's the opportunity cost, okay? Now, when you make a trade-off, what do you lose? Okay, you lose the ability to engage in the next highest alternative, okay? In economics, opportunity cost is always an opportunity that is given up. Okay? It is the road not taken. That's probably the best way to explain it. The road not taken, you are giving it up, all right? And you are using your money, you're allocating resources towards something else. So let's take a look at it from a macro versus a micro perspective, okay? Being aware of trade-offs and their resulting opportunity cost is vital in understanding economic decisions at all levels, okay? So at the macro level, okay? So suppose Congress approves $400 billion to basically build new highways, all right? So they're going to pump a lot of money, $400 billion into new highways. Benefit is, hey, you get new highways, you get less holes in the road, you get less damage, and all of a sudden these roads are a lot easier to drive on. That money that is directed at basically the construction of the highways is devoted to that. But $400 billion could go elsewhere. Could have gone toward medical research. Could have gone toward education. Again, at a macro level, nations have to figure out how they're going to spend their money. Now, you think about this. This past year, obviously, again, with the pandemic, right now, again, the push at the macro level is to, again, produce vaccines have enough money for these vaccines to be distributed, to be implemented. So there's a ton of money involved there, okay? So at the same time, what is the trade-off? What is the opportunity cost by using these vaccines? Again, areas like infrastructure, areas like education, okay? It all really depends on certain situations. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So at the micro level, all right, think about this. You are at the end of the summer. It's in August, and you're working part-time job. You're working your first job in high school, and you're working fast food, and you're making decent paychecks. Man, I really like this. Well, in the summer, you're with your friends, and you want to spend all your paycheck on a trip to Cedar Point. Okay, so suppose you get $500 paycheck. All of a sudden, you're like, yeah, $500. We're gonna go to Cedar Point. We're gonna have a great time. So you decide to have a weekend at Cedar Point. You get a hotel. You go on all the rides. You get the day pass, that kind of thing. The opportunity cost, though, is that now, because you spent that $500 on the Cedar Point trip, you can't afford gas. You can't afford food. You can't afford school supplies. So all of a sudden, whoa, you're stuck. And at the high school level, I was there. That happened to me. You'd be like, hey, Mom, Dad, I need some gas money. I need some money for new clothes. I need some money for some food, some lunches. So, again, you get to have a great time with your friends at Cedar Point, but you spent all of your paycheck. And all of a sudden, the opportunity cost is the other items, those good alternatives that you gave up, okay? So, we have something we call production possibilities curve. So the production possibilities curve basically is a simple graph showing the maximum combination of goods and services that can be produced from a fixed amount of resources in a given amount of time. Okay, so say you run a jewelry store, right? And you have enough resources to make either 10 bracelets or 5 earrings. If you want to make both, an opportunity is going to occur. Okay, so you are either going to go all in on bracelets. If you do that, you don't have enough for earrings. If you decide to go all in on earrings, you don't have enough to make those 10 bracelets. Okay, so this is kind of at the micro level with a jewelry store, but the classic macro level in this kind of situation is the military spending, guns, versus civilian spending, butter. So gun versus butter is our last little descriptor here. So again, in times of war, you're going to see the government allocate resources. You look at World War II, where everything's revved up. Everyone is putting all of their effort and energy into the war effort. Okay? Now, in times of peace, in times of crisis, like right now in the pandemic, government is allocating those resources toward butter, those civilian goods. Okay? Whether it's PPE for hospitals, whether it's the vaccine, all these things are considered to be the civilian goods. So right now, again, this little graph that we're seeing here, again, we have one on the y-axis, you've got quantity of guns or military goods produced, and then on the x-axis, you've got quantity of butter produced. Okay, so again, this pendulum is going to constantly ebb and flow depending on, are we in peacetime, are we in wartime? Okay, so in extreme situations, basically the government would have to decide between producing all military goods or all civilian goods. All right, the government has to make that decision. Now we're in peace times now, so we're looking at a lot of focus toward civilian goods. Now the amount of military goods given up in a year is the opportunity cost for increasing civilian goods and vice versa. Okay, so again, we are not in global conflict right now. We are not in major wars. Okay, if that was reversed, if all of a sudden we were to get into a war, then that guns versus butter pendulum would switch and shift toward guns. Okay. Now, the president makes a decision on the production of each of these goods. Okay. Taxes are collected, and then the nation must decide what to do with the revenue. Okay. So our taxpayer money is going to go into what the government is going to decide. Okay. So when I was growing up in high school, again, we had war in Afghanistan, war in Iraq. All right. A lot of military goods, a lot of military production is going toward both of those conflicts at that time. Okay. Now, again, things have cooled. U.S. military is not involved. Therefore, we can start saying, hey, we got to start looking at more and more civilian-based goods, the butter per se. Okay? All right. Hey, that is our second discussion. You're going to have another journal log that's going to go along with this, and you're really going to like the activity, our first in-class project that's going to be economics-based. We'll get into that at the end of the week. Okay? Take care, folks, and I will see you next time.